Welcome, my friends. We're very fortunate tonight to have a conversation with a woman author, Kate Genovese. She's a registered nurse and has written 3 books. Now, the latest book we're going to talk about tonight is 2 weeks since my last confession. Welcome, Kate. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, I just mentioned that you wrote 2 books before this one. Why don't you mention now those 2, and then we'll get to this one here.
Okay, my first book I wrote it was published in 2001, 30 Years in September, which is a nurse's memoir, and it chronicles...
I'm going to interrupt because you are a registered nurse,
I am.
so this is a nurse's memoir, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a biography, and it chronicles my life as a nurse and different experiences, and I talk about patients and my personal experience as a nurse and my personal life. The second book was Loving Joe Gallucci, and the subtitle was Life in Love with Hepatitis C, and that actually was based loosely on a true story. It had to do with my relationship with my husband and a girl I went to nursing school with and her husband. It was a story all intertwined. And what happened was, while I was writing the story about them, my husband was diagnosed with hepatitis C.
Wow.
So it just kind of all came together, and
in hepatitis C, that's the worst one of the 2. I mean, what am I thinking about now? Hepatitis A and C.
Hepatitis
C is the worst.
60% of the people that get hepatitis C are it's from IV drug use and all that. But you can also get it from blood transfusions and tattoos and all that. And a lot of baby boomers are getting it because it's a slow progressive disease that a lot of times you get when you're 19 and 20, and you don't realize you have it until you're in your 50s. So that's
2
that.
weeks since my last confession. I'll have to admit, I did not read word for word, but I did read 75%. I'm very familiar with the characters.
Sounded like you read
tell
a lot
us a little bit about the story and how it developed. You got a strong Catholic mother, a political father, and a bunch of kids and siblings, and they're all, boy, they all have a lot to say.
Yeah, it was pretty fun writing this. It took me about 5 years to write, and another year with my editor redoing everything. So it's been quite an experience, and it's a story. It's a family saga, and it starts in 1951, and it's the O'Brien family, and it's the setting is Cambridge in Boston, Massachusetts, and the O'Briens have 8 children, very, very Catholic, very strict, and it focuses on 2 of the O'Briens, Sean and Molly.
So Sarah is on the outskirts a little bit. Isn't it Sarah that is the other sister that she's
that's Susan.
Oh, Susan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sarah was Sean's girlfriend and wife.
All right, so I get down
Susan,
to
that's okay. There's a lot of characters in there. So, it mostly is about those 2. It throws Susan in there a little bit because of some domestic violence and all that I wanted to mention. But, it was very interesting writing this. Things just came to me. A lot of times writers write what they know about.
Right,
and in this case, I did write a little bit from my experience, although it's not my story.
Right.
But I had a drug addiction when I was younger, and I lost my nurse's license, actually. So I could write, I knew in my head what Molly was going through. And I knew Sean I felt very close with. A lot of the times when I was writing about Sean, I was thinking of my brother-in-law, who I actually dedicated the book to, my brother-in-law Paul, who went to Vietnam and he died. And I thought about him and his experiences a lot in Vietnam because he came home not the same person.
Well, you're into a time period, 51.
Yeah.
Now, 51, and from my recollection, is 1951. There wasn't too much going on. The war was going. The Korean War was just getting over with.
Right, right.
And the soldiers were coming back from them. But it was a lot like Leave It to Beaver. The movement was a little pretty good community.
Right.
Mothers were home with the children. Dad worked, and there wasn't, the axe murderer wasn't hiding behind every tree the way people think they are now. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it was a pretty nice quiet time. I was in high school through the 50s, and I was also in the service in the late 50s, so I have some experience with those times. And you're right, then the protest period began.
Yeah, then Vietnam started, and that's when the book gets going. It gives a little background in the beginning about what the Catholic culture was like in the O'Brien family. And
pretty strict, actually.
Yeah, very strict. And the title comes from, actually, when I was growing up, my mother was very Catholic, not like Mrs. O'Brien, but very Catholic, and we had to go to confession. And so as we got older, 13 or 14, my mother would say, all right, get down there and go to confession every week. And finally I said, oh, come on, Mom, think about this. You're making me go to confession every week. What do I have to tell? So she said, all right, every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
So you'd go in and say, bless me, Father, for I sin. It's been 2 weeks since my last confession. So that's where the title came from. So people seem to relate to that.
And the education process, and then the rebellion of the children towards the parents.
Right.
Was a period of time when that's basically, I would wonder whether there's been a million books written on when did this rebellion start, because everything we seem to be cruising right along through the 50s into the 60s, and then the Vietnam War came, and now we still haven't been able to put these kids back in the bottle again. We let them out, and they have a lot to say, and they are not afraid to say it. A kid today is not afraid to be listened to.
No. And it's good and it's bad. But in this book, finally, Molly has a voice. She gets to say what she wants to say. She goes down a very dark path, but comes out. I don't want to tell too much of the book.
You don't want to tell. Okay, that's right. That's why.
But it's a bittersweet ending, I feel. It was interesting writing this because it's a tough subject matter in there a little bit, the sexual abuse or the incest. But it's very educational, and this is true because I had to interview some people for it that have been sexually abused, that they didn't remember being sexually abused until they got older. And then Sean, he didn't remember being the abuser.
Right. Yeah.
So you go.
And then when he approached his sisters about it, they didn't want to talk to him about it.
No. And he knew something was wrong with himself. He knew that it tells in the story how he has some flashbacks, and he's trying to put these puzzle pieces together.
Exactly.
What happened to him. So it was very interesting because interviewing people, they all kind of had that same story. They couldn't remember, or they remembered and suppressed it really bad because it's very painful.
I suppose it's a recognized disease. I mean, I suppose it's recognized by psychiatrists that people do that. They have, they do be able to push things back and out of the way. I think there was a time period here when we went through, lately you're talking about the church and the sexual abuse in the church, where people didn't remember this happening for 20 years, and then all of a sudden it popped into their heads.
Right.
And before that, we had the people in Malden, or I forget their names.
Oh yeah, the Amaral.
With the little church, the Amarals, right? And they got in big trouble, and people were saying, well, the kids didn't remember it, and then how do you believe a 4-year-old? But in the back here, you put down, you gave a little message in the back couple of pages about
I did
the facts and figures.
Some research, and I give some descriptions or some websites to go to that are helpful, and some words that talk about sexual abuse, like disassociation, and what happens with the people when they do disassociate from this event happening.